Hello and welcome to our Do-It-Yourself Waterwise Garden Design video series, where we will teach you a step-by-step process to empower you to create your very own custom garden design for a beautiful Waterwise or California native garden. This video series was created by the Chino Basin Water Conservation District and the Waterwise Community Center, and throughout this series we'll be using our Waterwise Garden Planner website, which we created to learn all about our top plant choices for Waterwise and native gardens for Southern California gardens and how to combine them into a beautiful design. We are based in Southern California, and so the images you see will reflect gardens appropriate to our local area. But over the years, we've had many people join us in online workshops where we go through this same garden design content, and we've received lots of feedback that people have found it useful to use the principles we're presenting and use their local resources wherever they are to work with the appropriate plants for that area. So whether you're joining us from near or far, welcome. And this first video is to serve as a preview, sort of letting you know what you're getting yourself into with this whole video series. There is a lot of content here. We have developed hours of tutorials to really give you everything you would need to know for one great way to create your own garden design and move forward confidently with your project. This is not the only way to do garden design. If you don't want to get into all of these details, you don't need to. Can you start with putting in a few plants, learning as you go, and slowly expanding your Waterwise garden over time? Absolutely. Can you work more intuitively instead of drawing out everything to scale on graph paper if a more intuitive approach is going to work for you? Absolutely. So use the content here however you would like, in whatever way it's going to be useful to you. We've developed this video series after working for years one-on-one with people or getting feedback from our in-person and online workshops. And so we know that for a lot of people, they really have wanted us to develop this step-by-step sort of program of one way to do a detailed garden design where they can really take their time and learn it all themselves. So if you want to go through all of the presentations, that's great. We hope you use it that way, but also feel free to just kind of pick and choose whatever parts are going to work for you. If you want to just sort of check out our basic resources, what we are going to refer to quite a bit throughout this is our Waterwise Garden Planner website. And in video 9 in the series, it's going to show you kind of a live demonstration of how to use everything on the site, but it's pretty intuitive. So if you don't want to go through all the details yet, or you just have a couple of plants to put in, kind of replacing plants in a planter area or something like that, you can jump directly to the Waterwise Garden Planner website, use the plant finder to enter some search criteria about your area, and get our top recommendations. If you don't want to sit for hours before you start looking for inspiration of plant combinations and different planting schematics that might work for you to kind of copy in your design, you can go directly to our garden design sections and start looking at example plans there. You can also check out our resources page where we have information about the local places where you can get plants, landscape materials, and lots of other additional information. But we hope you are going to want to take a deep dive with us because we know for the average person who is just kind of starting out that you absolutely can be successful with doing your own garden design, but there are a number of things that most people just haven't ever really thought about before, and so this video is going to walk you through them. Before we jump into the preview of what each of these videos is going to offer you, I figure I should tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm even talking to you about this. My name is Scott Kleinrock. I'm the Conservation Programs Manager here at the Waterwise Community Center, and I am passionate about California native and Waterwise landscapes and have been working in the horticulture industry for the past about 17 years. Throughout that time, I've done many things, starting with interning at a botanical garden, doing landscape maintenance, going to school for landscape architecture, and then working for 8 years in the public gardens world at the Huntington Library Art Collections and Botanical Gardens, where I worked on landscape and garden design, construction management, as well as horticultural management. But all throughout that time, really my passion has been reimagining what we can do in our everyday urban and suburban front yards and backyards. So I was thrilled to have the chance to start working at the Waterwise Community Center, where day to day for the last 5 years, I've been interacting with the general public. And so this video series is created from sort of what's been some of our most successful content presented to people in workshops or other formats over the years, and then combined for a specific purpose of teaching people to do their very own landscape designs using our online resources. The agency that I work for, the Chino Basin Water Conservation District, is a special district, so similar to a school district or a fire district, that was created by a public vote in 1949 to provide water conservation services to what now is essentially the urban western edge of San Bernardino County. And we are active in both the supply side and the demand side of water conservation. On the supply side, we own and operate 8 large-scale infiltration basins which capture stormwater and other occasionally available water and allow them through natural processes to percolate and be cleaned before they help recharge our local aquifer. On the demand side of water conservation, we're focused on saving water in the outdoor landscape. And to that end, we have a beautiful Waterwise demonstration garden with over 3 acres of demonstration plantings of California native and Waterwise plants. And that's open 6 days a week for free at the Waterwise Community Center, our headquarters in Montclair, California. And we do lots of education, everything from curriculum integrated K-12 education to free in-person workshops, online workshops, and lots of online resources like this. So that's a little bit about who we are and why we are providing all of this content for you. And so the rest of this video is to walk you through step by step what's in store for you if you join us for this video series. In part 1, we're going to briefly focus on some garden explanations to make sure we're all on the same page as we get started. You might have heard the term California native, or Waterwise, or drought tolerant, or maybe xeriscape. What are we even trying to do here? And so we can start together and know what we're in for. In part 2, we'll talk about turf replacement rebates, what's available, and will you qualify for it, and some tips and tricks related to that. In part 3, we'll talk about starting by setting your goals. Selecting the plants actually comes relatively late in the process of a good garden design. And what you really want to think about first is, what are you even trying to get out of your project? What are going to be your goals for your landscape project? And who are those goals going to be providing for? Thinking about this in a very logical process really helps make sure that your project as a whole isn't just a lovely place to look at, but it is functional for your lifestyle and what's going to work for you. From there, we're going to talk about features that you might want to consider for your garden. So not just the theoretical goals, but getting down to things like patios, pathways, materials, how to set up a lovely outdoor space for yourself, and things you might want to consider other than just the Waterwise plants. We'll talk about not just providing for the humans in the landscape, but considering also providing homes for songbirds, butterflies, or beneficial pollinators in our gardens as well. We'll also talk about what to do with the water that falls on your property and the new paradigm if we're going to be doing a garden design project, which is when water falls, we want to slow it down, spread it out, and let it sink in instead of having it run off of our property. This is also part of the requirements if you're doing a turf replacement rebate, and so we are going to make sure that you know the basics of what you need to know to be successful with that. Moving on into part 5, we're going to talk about your space. So assessing your space and why it's important to take some time looking at your space intentionally and thinking about what the opportunities and constraints are in your yard to set yourself up for success with the design that considers those restraints and builds off of those opportunities. We're going to talk about the all-important factors regarding what you need to know to put the right plant in the right place, which has so much to do with the success of the living part of your landscape. We're going to talk about matching plants to your soil and site conditions. You don't need to get a degree in soil science to understand this. We're making it very simple for you. We'll walk you through a very simple drainage test that you can do in your yard to understand that very important factor and how to interpret the results of that very simple step. We're going to run you through a site assessment checklist. This may look like it's a lot here, but honestly, a lot of it is very logical once you sort of sit down and look at it. So we're going to empower you to be able to do that and anticipate everything you're going to want to anticipate with your landscape design. And then with all of those concepts, we're going to walk you through how to actually draw out your base map of your property, take your measurements, and create what's called a scaled base map on graph paper, where each square is going to be equal to 1 or 2 feet in the real world. The power of doing that is that as you go forward and move towards your landscape design, you can draw out all of your plants and all of your features, and it will take up the appropriate amount of space on that plan. So you can know exactly what you can fit into your garden design and how many plants eventually you would need to order. It can be very tricky to look at a site and know exactly how it's going to come together and how much room there is for everything. If you want to work more intuitively, like we said earlier, that's fine. We'll bring in a few ideas about how you can do that throughout these video series, but I highly encourage you to take that extra step, even if it is something that you're not quite comfortable with, and try your best to take your measurements and create your scaled drawing. It will generally make things easier for you in the long run. And so from that base map, in part 7, we're going to walk you through creating your own site assessment drawing. So taking all of those concepts of how to look at your site and then to get that down on paper, which will be really important as a layer to consider along with our base map as we start to create the actual garden design. In part 8, we'll introduce the key concepts for residential landscape design. If you ask any 10 designers, you would probably get 10 different versions of how to do this, and they're all probably correct. But this is just one way of looking at it for you, where we look at design as a system. You don't need to be creative, you don't need to be artistic, you don't need to be a genius. If you are creative or artistic, this is a great place where you can kind of express that. But if that's just not you, you can still create a beautiful landscape design by having it be a very logical and linear process. And so we'll provide that for you. Again, looking at this list, it looks like a lot, but we'll walk you through all of the basics, from things like landform and how creating mounds and low areas can not only change the look of the landscape, but it can help water settle in a great place. Things like massing of plants and when to use just 1 or 2 of something and when to use repetition to have a high impact visual part of the design. Very practical things like hydrozones, which is just a fancy word for grouping plants with similar moisture needs so that they're going to be easy to provide for what they want long term. We'll talk about connection spaces, pathways, access into your garden. We'll talk about many other aspects of design, and then how to combine those aspects with plant spaces to have everything look great together. So we'll look at planting design as just one of the aspects of creating a great design that's going to work for you, but we will spend time on the main factors related to planting design to not only create a functional space for you where your plants are going to have their best chance to thrive and be healthy, but also have it look great in the process. In part 9, we'll talk about finding inspiration and doing fun research. This is where you're going to be taking all the stuff that you learned and then looking at a lot of pretty pictures of plants and other gardens and really starting to get excited and being empowered by knowing how to look at these examples and know what might work really well for your landscape, or start to understand how to adapt other things that you see out in the world for the landscape that's going to be best for you. We'll do a deep dive on all the features on the Waterwise Garden Planner website, including the design examples. So whether you have an extra large or a rather modest yard size, how to take these examples as a starting point and then go from there with your own custom landscape design. And we'll also look at some other great resources created by others, including Calscape, Tree of Life Nursery, and the Theodore Payne Foundation. And finally, we'll bring it all together with a step-by-step example of how to create your very own garden design using the Waterwise Garden Planner resources. So we'll pick back up with your site assessment drawing, we'll revisit our goals, And then we'll start this process where, again, you don't need to be an artist, but just a very loose process of having fun, exploring different options on layers of tracing paper, looking back at our example resources, kind of picking some of those apart, understanding what we might want to do or how we might want to use those example resources to copy little bits of them and emulate them in our own designs, all coming together with your very own functional landscape design that's going to meet your goals, it's going to work with your site, and it's going to be something that you can really love. And then finally, we'll talk about how do you start to go from looking at this paper plan that you've created to visualizing that out in your landscape and making sure it's really going to work for you. Everything is going to feel great when you translate the paper plan to a landscape in person. So we'll talk about very simple ways to start to lay out and visualize your design plan. And so then with your custom design, where do you go from there? Well, we have lots of other resources to help you through all of the next steps. And as well, we teach lots of in-person free workshops at the Waterwise Community Center if you're local to us in Southern California, where we can get more hands-on and interactive and answer questions and go out into our demonstration garden and look at some of this. But a great place to go next to learn the next steps or to go deeper into certain topics is our full YouTube recorded workshop playlist, which you can find at cbwcd.org/YouTube. So from there, if you want to learn even more about specific topics, like how to garden for birds, butterflies, and pollinators, we have a whole additional workshop on that you can combine with everything you learned about the design process. If you want to learn more about how to actually plan out and build a functional dry stream bed that can capture all the water from your roof, we have a rainwater harvesting for home landscapes online workshop. And then when it comes to how to actually remove your lawn, how to install and establish a California native and Waterwise garden, or how to work with maybe your old lawn sprinkler system and retrofit it to support what's going to be a new Waterwise or native garden. We have you covered with all of that and more. And so you'll go from all of that to installing your landscape and then to moving into the establishment and care of that landscape. And we have those resources for you as well, from online workshops to in-person workshops to lots of information about care for each of the plants on the Waterwise Garden Planner. Because although the vast majority of plants that we recommend only need to be touched once, no more than twice a year to really stay looking their best, you do need to know what to do and when to keep everything going in the right direction. And so you'll design, you'll plant, you'll care, and you'll enjoy. And that's really what it's all about, is not just saving water with the Waterwise landscape, but having something that you can truly enjoy that does so much more for you than a conventional landscape ever could. And so just as an example, you'll go from maybe something like this to maybe something a little bit more like this. Something that has lots and lots of color. Something that can look beautiful throughout the year, whether it's the spring or even going into the hot summer and fall when these pictures were taken. And you don't need to have a huge yard or a multi-million-dollar house to do it. Whether it's capturing the water off of your roof and having that feature look great in your landscape and kind of frame a beautiful native landscape around it, to creating backyard or even front yard social spaces, to inviting in the birds and making sure that you have beautiful plantings as well. Waterwise Gardens and California native plants can absolutely have you covered. And so as you move from here, throughout the videos in the series, remember there's no one way to do it right. Make the process your own. We developed a lot of this content working with people over the years, and we are confident that you can create your own beautiful Waterwise or native landscape design using them. But if you want to pick and choose or just use pieces here and there, that's up to you. The most important thing is to have fun learning and do what works for you. So I hope you'll join us for the rest of this series and let us know what works for you. Leave us some comments. Let us know if you have questions. So have fun, get inspired, and be excited about all of the potential for transitioning part of your yard, the landscape where you work, or community space that you're involved with, from whatever it is now to a native or Waterwise landscape that does so much more than your old landscape ever did. If you want to learn how? Join us for the rest of these videos.